What are the current educational issues in secondary science? Over the course of the next 10 minutes, I will go some way towards answering this question, showing the broader picture for many of the prevailing issues by linking them back to three recurring implications: poor engagement, inclusion, and low attainment, which all lead to a lack of post-compulsory uptake. I shall also refer to measures and recommendations aimed at addressing these issues. By poor engagement, I am referring to students being switched off from their science studies due to a lack of motivation and disillusionment, which not only affects their results, but also their desire to continue the subject onto A-level and degree level. There are several factors that contribute to students' poor engagement. Firstly, science is not studied in contexts. By that I mean, we don't relate it to its relevance in the real world. Secondly, the curricula for courses out there is very content heavy, which neglects practical and vocational aspects of science. Thirdly, there's a lack of emphasis on teaching, inclusion and intervention effectiveness. And fourthly, addressing parental input and recognising it as a barrier to students' learning in terms of their can't do, won't do attitude. The science curriculum has been criticised for being too formulaic. A report commissioned by Exam Board AQA found from participants in a seminar on science education that the current curriculum was encouraging students to do the bare minimum in order to get through the exam instead of inspiring a lifelong interest in science. Worried about the uptake of all three sciences at GCSE and A-level, especially physics, the Royal Society of Chemistry has had a partnership grant scheme in place for the past 10 years to try to revitalise science education. They recognise that children get enthused about science's possibilities when outside of the classroom, asked to do real research as well as pairing them with those working in the field. Susan Tilstone, Head of Science at the Archbishop's School in Canterbury, recognises that the first steps to raising results is to raise the profile of your subject and, in so doing, inspire children, which is sometimes more easily done through enrichment activities. Chris Adams, Head of Science at Cater Park School in Bromley, explains that pupils need to see the relevance of science. Once they do, students then understand that there are careers in science other than being a doctor or a vet. A poll by the network of science learning centres found that almost all secondary science teachers say they are limited in giving pupils proper opportunities to do experiments. Practical science work is being hindered by a crowded curriculum and too much assessment. 69% of teachers blamed a content-heavy curriculum for reducing practical work, with 4 in 10 saying that assessment demands were too frequent. As we progress from one key stage to the next, the trend worsens. According to this survey, the drop-off in practical work worsens as pupils get older, while 63% of Key Stage 3 teachers said they spent 40% of their teaching time on practical work. That drops to 43% in Key Stage 4 teachers, and just 28% post-16. Let's look at the numbers involved from a teacher's perspective. A teacher on Tess's forum who wished to remain anonymous remarked that, "By the time my Year 11s got their results, they will have sat at least 13 science papers, and in 2 years the biggest gap between exams is merely 3.5 months. Professor Sir John Holman, Director of the National Science Learning Centre and Governmental Advisor, was alarmed by the findings, saying that learning science without practicals is the equivalent of studying literature without books. Raising students' aspirations is something that should begin at home. They can pick up this can't-do attitude from their parents. Every time science leader James McGough of Thornhill Community College, Dewsbury, came across a child with a block about science, their parents always said the same thing: "I don't expect him to be any good at physics. I never was." So they got parents to come into school, went over the basics with them, and attitudes started to change. King Edward VI School in Morpeth already recognises the power of getting parents on board by inviting pupils in for twilight coursework workshops with their carers and guardians. Pupils with special educational needs can make up more than 30% of a class of between 25 and 30 pupils. Inclusive learning ensures that all pupils are provided with a curriculum that is delivered in a way which best suits the specific needs of individuals. The National Curriculum's statutory inclusion statement sets out 3 principles that are essential to developing a more inclusive curriculum. In terms of Science for All curriculum, a lot of emphasis is placed on differentiation. Low attainment is deemed to be lower than expected performance for a GCSE cohort compared to either their target grades or results from previous years. Across the UK, just 17% of 16 to 18-year-olds took one or more science A-levels in 2009. The biggest loss is from schools who do not submit any candidates at all. In 2009, nearly 500 schools and colleges in England did not enter a single candidate in A-level physics. The Royal Society suggests that the decline in provision is likely due to the difficulty of finding new physics specialists to replace teachers who retire. There are fewer candidates to study physics at degree level, which creates a vicious circle as there are fewer graduates with the knowledge to be specialist science teachers. Uptake at A-level has slumped due to the transferal of some students onto double award and core science courses, which either renders those students ineligible to enrol on A-level science courses, or they and the school soon come to realise that they are unable to bridge the knowledge gap that the transition from Key Stage 4 to Key Stage 5 has left them with. The knock-on effect of both poor engagement and low attainment is a reduced uptake in the sciences at AS and A-level. According to the National Audit Office report from November 2010, there has been only a slight increase in uptake of A-level physics since 2005. Whilst 2010's A* to C grades were up across the board for biology, chemistry and physics at GCSE, the number of top-end achievers, those gaining A* and A's, were down on last year. Encouragingly, the proportion of students studying the sciences as separate subjects rose, with numbers taking physics up by 16.4%, chemistry by 16.2% and biology by 14.2%. This rise is seen as a response to the STEM, or science, technology, engineering and maths industry sectors calling out for more graduates with specific technical and analytical skills.